That's Life Unlimited. Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Spectrum News Plus. Local stories, connecting communities. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
I'm Sharon Tazwell. Here's your Spectrum News in 90. Hurricane Helene continues to intensify as it crosses the Gulf of Mexico on a path to Florida. Our meteorologists expect Helene to strike the Big Bend area of Florida's northwestern coast late Thursday as a major hurricane. Evacuations are already underway as Florida's governor warns time is running out.
Most of the models have this becoming a major hurricane. Some even have it becoming a Category 4. You have time to implement your plan.
Donald Trump and Kamala Harris campaign in battleground states Wednesday with a focus on the economy front and center. While in North Carolina, the former president blamed Harris for what many voters see as a struggling economy. In Pennsylvania, Harris said she's focused on the middle class.
She's been there for almost 4 years, and she didn't do it. She didn't create wealth.
We have an extraordinary opportunity to make our middle class the engine of America's prosperity.
A new report Wednesday called out the Secret Service for failing to take charge of decision-making for security at the Pennsylvania rally where Trump was shot in July. The bipartisan Senate committee's report called the failures preventable. Those are your headlines. Now, here's your weather on the ones.
I'm meteorologist Brittany Hamilton here with you. We're watching some showers and storms moving across the eastern seaboard, but all eyes are on Hurricane Helene as it continues to strengthen here in some very warm water. We're expecting it to intensify even further as we go through the next 24 hours. So as we continue to track Helene, we are expecting hurricane conditions to arrive in parts of Florida by Thursday. Heavy rain, strong winds, and storm surge, all a possibility. We'll talk more about that coming up.
You have time to implement your plan. You have the ability to make sure you have gas, make sure you have non-perishable food, water. All those things can still be done. These effects are coming to the state of Florida, and it's not a matter of whether we're going to get effects. It's just a question of how significant those effects will be.
All eyes are on Hurricane Helene as the tropical system continues to intensify in the Gulf of Mexico, and time is running out to prepare. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sharon Tazwell. Thousands in the Sunshine State have begun evacuating ahead of what could become the strongest hurricane to hit the U.S. in over a year. Helene swamped parts of Mexico Wednesday as it turns on a path forecasters say will take it to Florida as a major storm that could swallow entire homes. Hurricane hunters from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released video Wednesday showing a fly-through of the storm's eye. The massive storm has sent residents scrambling for higher ground, closed schools, and led to state of emergencies throughout the southeast. And we have team coverage keeping a close eye on the hurricane. Spectrum's Carla Reddit starts us off with a decision thousands of residents face right now.
You still have time to make the preparations and put your plan in place today, but that time is running out.
And running out fast. Helene is now a hurricane, swirling past Mexico and tracking toward landfall in Florida. And preparing for the worst is a moving target.
Conditions may very well, in the wide range of possibilities, be a Cat 1 all the way to a Cat 4. Many areas to the south are already beginning to feel the impacts from the storm.
Part of that impact is tropical storm force winds and rain lashing the Keys and southern Florida. In the hours ahead, those Those conditions will intensify and batter the entire western coastline before an expected landfall in the Big Bend area Thursday evening.
Many of our counties, if not all of them, have called for low-lying and manufactured housing evacuations already.
A term being used by a lot of officials this week. You can hide from the wind, but run from the water.
If you do have a major surge and you stay behind, that is potentially hazardous.
Forecasts of previous hurricanes like Ian and Idalia are opting to stay put.
I always draw up lots of water ahead of time, make sure I got food in the house, all that.
We're going surfing. We're hitting those waves.
Still, others know staying is risky.
If you're a godly person, pray, because I don't really need this. Neither do any of us.
Carla Reddit, Spectrum News.
Our meteorologist Nate Harrington continues our team coverage from our North Carolina weather studio. Nate, track the system out for us. What can we expect to see over the next 48 hours?
Well, we got an important update on Wednesday. Not only has Helene strengthened over the last 24 hours, it's expected to strengthen even more in the next 12 to 18 hours, now expected to become a Category 4 hurricane before landfall. The track is fairly unchanged. We haven't seen that much deviation from the track that we got on Tuesday into Wednesday. It's still targeting the Big Bend of Florida. Areas I'm very, very familiar with, spending some time in Tallahassee, going to school at Florida State University. There is a lot of undeveloped area here. There's a lot of woods, so a lot of tree damage and a lot of flooding, most likely coming from storm surge. And with the latest update from the National Hurricane Center, they're expecting now 15 feet or more of storm surge in some of these areas that were highlighted earlier, especially across the Big Bend of Florida, Sharon.
All right, so Nate, Helene is expected to make landfall as a major hurricane. What are the biggest threats for those in its path?
Right at the top, it's catastrophic flooding. It's the storm surge. It's the heavy rain that they're going to see. Like I just mentioned, 15, almost 20 feet of storm surge is going to be possible along the coast. Wind damage inland. We could see hurricane force winds as far north as 50 to 60 miles north of the actual coast. And then always, when you have a landfalling tropical system, an enhanced risk of tornadoes and widespread power outages. All of those, but farther north too, Sharon.
All right, Nate Harrington in North Carolina. Thanks. Many healthcare centers in the hurricane's potential strike zone have already activated emergency plans, and that includes Tampa General Hospital. Joining me now is Tony Venezia, the hospital's Senior Director of Public Safety. Tony, I understand Tampa General has its own protected power supply.
We do. About 2 years ago, we opened our new central energy plant. And what's really critical of that is we moved all of our generators and boilers and fuel about 50 feet up in the air. So really, for us, that was the sustainability that we needed to be able to operate the hospital under normal conditions, 100% power, regardless of any kind of storm surge.
So, Tony, how is the hospital protected from flooding?
So a couple different ways. But it's a waterproof barrier around the hospital, and it actually gives us 15 feet of protection from surge. And really, it's critical for us because, our surroundings, we're on an island, we're here in Florida, but really, it's really been a game changer for us because, we understand our responsibility as the level 1 trauma center for this region that not only serves the region, but the whole state of Florida. So for us to have that protection, it's really paramount for us to keeping our patients and our team safe.
Absolutely. It's very impressive. All right. So what is happening inside Tampa General to make sure that healthcare workers and patients are okay?
Yep. So we actually have a warehouse that's out of the floodplain. We keep lots of supplies there, about 10 semi-trucks full, 300 pallets. And when we know that there's a storm that's kind of coming our way, we start to activate this hurricane plan and we start bringing those supplies in. So, and that includes additional medical supplies, gas, we have food, water, everything we need to run a normal operation in the hospital in the event that we have to be by ourselves for a period of time. And that's really important for the team. So not only are we doing that, but we're looking, we're always looking at the potential impacts of the storm to know if we need to elevated all on top of that. But we also have hurricane teams, so we've activated. So tomorrow morning, our A team, they'll come in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they will stay through the duration of the storm. And so we have sleep plans around that. Again, we have supplies, we have the food to be sustainable. We have everything we can do to make sure that we're delivering that world-class care to our patients that they deserve in our community.
Yeah, sounds like you are well prepared. Tony Venezia from Tampa General Hospital, thanks so much for your time, and be safe.
Take care.
The race for the White House going through key battleground states. What both Trump and Harris are focused on. That's just ahead on Spectrum News.
The 2024 election will decide who leads our nation and the balance of power in Congress, impacting all of us. From Capitol Hill to the Oval Office, let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth coverage with our dedicated experts in local politics. Strengthening democracy by informing your community. That's our mission. Available on all of your favorite devices, exclusively on Spectrum.
What if you never had to worry about what you could do? Because you could do anything. Anywhere could be the center of everywhere. And boundaries only existed to be pushed. So the only limit you faced was how big you could dream. What would you do then? Some pretty cool stuff, I bet. Yeah, that'd be some life. That'd be life unlimited.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
I'm meteorologist Brittany Hamilton here with you, and as we're continuing to track Helene, it's a hurricane. It became a hurricane earlier today, and it continues to strengthen in the Gulf of Mexico. As you can see, the storm is very large. That's one of the big concerns with this. And in terms of tropical storm force winds, they extend over 300 miles outside of the center, but the actual entire diameter of the storm, how wide this storm is, extends over 700 miles. So it is a very large storm, and that's why when we show you the cone, we do also want to talk about the impacts outside of the cone of uncertainty as well. As we take a look at the latest track from the National Hurricane Center, the biggest update here is that this storm could potentially come in as a Category 4 storm, so even stronger winds expected for parts of the Big Bend region and the panhandle of Florida. We've also seen a little bit of a slight shift to the east in some of the track guidance, so we are going to be keeping an eye on that as that continues to move inland. Potentially some very strong winds still for parts of southern Georgia as well. And then the storm will weaken as it moves a little bit more inland, eventually becoming a remnant low once it's over parts of the Midwest. But again, this is expected to be a very dangerous storm as we look at the overall track here. As we're looking at timing as well, I would say you want to be prepared now, especially in Florida, and some of the earliest tropical storm force winds and hurricane force winds are possible for Thursday. As we look at the peak storm surge, so this is potential as we look over the next, I would say 12 to next 48 hours across Cedar Key. That's going to be the highest spot there. And then there were also some spots down in southern Florida that could see 3 to 5 feet of storm surge, so above ground level. On top of the storm storm surge flooding, the rain a huge issue as well. And as we look at the excessive rainfall outlook, we have a couple of areas here in pink. You do notice areas down toward Tallahassee also have a high chance of flooding with this storm. We'll talk more about this coming up in just a few minutes.
With just 40 days until the 2024 election, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris continue to focus on key battleground states that could have a major impact on the race for the White House. The former president spent part of the day in North Carolina, where he delivered remarks on the economy in Charlotte. The vice president spent the day in Pittsburgh, where she also spoke about the economy.
We have an extraordinary opportunity to make our middle class the engine of America's prosperity.
Kamala goes to work every day in the White House. Families are suffering now. So if she has a plan, she should stop grandstanding and do it. Just do it.
All right, so Evan, the economy remains a hot button issue. What do you make of each candidate's position, and do you think it's resonating with voters?
Right, in poll after poll, we see the economy rated as a top issue, and that's why both candidates have been so focused on economic plans. For Trump, the strategy has been fairly simple here. He points to the low inflation during his presidency and then compares that to the spike in inflation that we saw under the Biden-Harris administration. We should note, the rate of inflation has gone way down, but the prices remain high, which is ultimately what voters will see when they head to the grocery store, for example. As far as new policy, Trump has been pushing new tariffs, which he says he hopes will boost domestic manufacturing. Meanwhile, Harris has been trying to counter Trump's framing of her as quote-unquote comrade Kamala, as she looks to show she's not radical or socialist, saying very clearly at Wednesday's event, I am a capitalist. As far as her plan, she speaks a lot about creating what she calls an opportunity economy, pushing for an expanded child tax credit, financial support for first-time home buyers, and sharing tax incentives for small businesses.
And Evan, both campaigns are putting much of their time and energy on key swing states, as we're seeing. Break down the importance of places like Pennsylvania and Georgia, with just weeks away from voters hitting the polls.
Yeah, they've been getting a lot of commercials over the last few months. And in the end, this race is going to come down to just 7 states. We're talking about Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin in the Midwest, Arizona, Nevada in the Southwest, and Georgia and North Carolina in the Southeast. But if there's just one region to circle, it's no doubt the Midwest, and that's just because of electoral math. In the race to 270, Democrats can lose Georgia, they can lose Arizona, they can lose Nevada, and still win as long as they hold on to that crucial blue wall. And no doubt Pennsylvania is the biggest prize because it carries 20 electoral votes, Sharon.
Oof, all right. Evan Kozloff in Washington. Thanks.
Thank you.
A New York court will hear former President Donald Trump's appeal of his civil fraud verdict Thursday. Trump is asking the court to nullify the judge's findings that he deceived banks, insurers, and others for years by lying about his wealth on paperwork. If liable, the ruling could cost him nearly $500 million. Well, Trump's lawyers claim the verdict was egregious and should be reversed. Well, lawyers for New York Attorney General Letitia James say the verdict was backed by overwhelming evidence. The Israeli military says it's preparing for a possible ground operation in Lebanon after intercepting a Hezbollah missile headed towards Tel Aviv. Israel's chief of staff told troops on the northern border Wednesday to, quote, prepare the ground for your possible entry. Israeli officials say the latest strike from a militant group was the closest to Tel Aviv yet. No injuries were reported. UN officials say the conflict is forcing thousands of Syrians and Lebanese people to leave their homes to cross the border into Syria.
They are in clogged highways with airstrikes happening around them. I mean, I received a report from my local staff of cars being bombed a few meters away from one of their parents. So,
Israel says it has hit 2,000 targets in Lebanon during airstrikes the past 3 days. New safety concerns over the production of Boeing planes coming up on Spectrum News, what workers say they felt pressured to do.
For the millions of school-aged children across the country, the state of their schools can have a lasting impact on their health and well-being.
The majority of school districts aren't doing comprehensive regular water quality testing.
As CO2 levels rise in a space, cognitive function takes a direct decline.
We visit 2 school districts working to create safe and healthy environments for their students.
Watch Exploring Your Health, Curing Our Classrooms. Available on the Spectrum News app.
When you never have to worry about thinking too big? Because you have a connection that's ready for anything. That's Life Unlimited. That's Spectrum.
I tell my son, I love you every single day. Now, my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious moment.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Brittany Hamilton, and as we're looking in the tropics at infrared satellite, you see a lot going on here. This is Hurricane Helene as it has continued to intensify, and we're expecting it to intensify even more as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, looking at the sea surface temperatures, and this doesn't tell the whole story, there are a lot of things that can impact if a storm becomes stronger or if it weakens, but typically water temperatures over 80 degrees, 82 degrees is very conducive for strengthening. Water temperature is around 88 degrees near where the center of the storm is, so we are expecting it to tap into some of that fuel and potentially becoming a major hurricane, maybe even a Category 4 by the time we get close to landfall as we go through Thursday. So I would say having those preparations in place early Thursday, definitely going to be your best bet, especially in Florida, the Big Bend region right now, looking like the area that could be more greatly impacted. But even as this moves inland, we are expecting it to weaken, but still potentially a Category 1 storm by the time we get into early Friday, and then eventually it'll weaken pretty quick from there, dropping back down to a low pressure system. But as we look at those alerts, those have expanded with the latest update. So even parts of the Charlotte area all the way into North Carolina, the mountains, included in a tropical storm warning, meaning that we could have strong wind gusts over 40 miles per hour, potentially maybe up to 60 or even 70. But the areas that are under the hurricane warning expected to have the greatest impacts, and that it does include the Tallahassee area. And as we look at the winds, one, you have to remember the storm is very large. So that's going to mean that even though the center may not pass over your area, you could still be in an area that experiences some very strong winds. As we look at Thursday, 10 p.m., we start to get more of those hurricane force winds moving into parts of Florida. And then eventually, as this moves inland, we're still going to be holding on to maybe very strong tropical storm force winds or even hurricane force winds all the way through Georgia. Outside of the wind, we are looking at severe potential as well. So with a landfalling system, tornadoes not out of the question. Make sure you have a way to get those alerts. And then on top of that, the flood risk, very great, especially as this does bring in a lot of moisture to Florida all the way up into Tennessee.
Check this out. A third house has now collapsed off the North Carolina coast. Officials have closed off the beach due to dangerous debris. Tuesday's house collapse was a third to collapse there since Friday and the 10th house in the last 4 years. The house was vacant and no injuries were reported. Reality TV star Julie Chrisley has been resentenced to 7 years in prison for bank fraud and tax evasion. Back in June, a court of appeals found a legal error in how the judge calculated her sentence. During a sentencing hearing on Wednesday, the judge declined Chrisley's request to give her a lower sentence than originally imposed. Chrisley and her husband are well known for their show Chrisley Knows Best. The pair were convicted in 2022 for conspiring to defraud community banks out of more than $30 million. 988 suicide and crisis hotline callers can now get a more localized response. The Department of Health and Human Services says callers will now be routed to help centers based on where they are, rather than their phone number's area code for faster support. Verizon and T-Mobile started geo-routing 988 calls last week. AT&T is expected to start this process next month. Now, the FCC will vote on October 17th on a rule that would require all wireless carriers to implement this technology. Boeing factory workers say they felt pressured to prioritize production speed over quality of the company's aircrafts. That's going to result from a special investigation by the Federal Aviation Administration made public Wednesday. Spectrum's Ariel Wessler has more on the report and fresh safety concerns it's raising for Boeing planes.
A second day of testimony by Federal Aviation Administrator Michael Whitaker on the agency's oversight of Boeing and whether it's enough.
The agency has to be proactive and aggressive in oversight, not reactive.
Whitaker appearing before the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations on the same day the results of a special audit of the company's production and safety culture by the FAA became public. The enhanced scrutiny after a January 5th incident where a door plug blew off an Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX jet in flight. The report said employees reported feeling crunched by schedule pressures and the FAA questioned their training to perform assigned tasks. Boeing said in a statement it is working to make improvements to its production to prioritize safety and quality. And on Tuesday, Whitaker told a House committee Boeing has made progress but needs more time.
I think it's going to take years of delivering that safety message and the employees actually seeing that safety is more important than production before that culture change.
Meanwhile, at Boeing plants on the West Coast, 33,000 union workers remain on strike and have been critical of Boeing's latest contract offer.
We had not just stagnating wages, but regressive wages.
The new offer made by Boeing Monday would give members a 30% raise over 4 years. The workers seek a 40% bump over the same span. Those workers went on strike on September 13th, bringing production of Boeing's commercial jets to a near halt. And Boeing gets most of its money only when its aircraft is delivered to an airline. Ariel Wessler, Spectrum News.
Egg prices are once again on the rise, jumping more than 28% compared to last year. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says bird flu is to blame. Nearly 101 million birds in 48 states have been impacted since January of 2022. The CDC says total egg production in July fell 2.6%. Officials say even with the recent spike, eggs aren't nearly as expensive as they were 2 years ago. I'm Sharon Tazwell. Thanks for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90s coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
Friday nights, The Big Deal with Errol Lewis, where Spectrum News' local political journalists break down the most important issues shaping our nation.
Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all of your favorite devices, exclusively on Spectrum.
At Spectrum Enterprise, we give over 80% of the Fortune 500 the technology solutions they need to meet their growing business demands. Whether it's ultra-fast connectivity, seamless transactions, safe and secure data, or reliable always-on technology. These businesses demand better, and we're here to deliver it. Get a network you can rely on with our 100% uptime SLA guarantee.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
Sometimes in life, in order to move forward, it helps to look back.
To learn from the pioneers and trailblazers.
To gain inspiration from those who came before us.
To show us what it means to act with empathy and to show that love has no labels.
Join WWE and Love Has No Labels throughout the year in celebrating people from all communities and heritages.
Because when love has no labels,
that's a love we can all fight for.
Spectrum News Plus. Local stories, connecting communities. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.